Lincoln High School, Friday morning, 7:58 a.m. The bell hadn't rung yet, but the halls were already alive, buzzing with the kind of chaos only teenagers can manufacture before 8 a.m. Backpacks slammed into lockers. Pop songs blared from cracked phone speakers. The air reeked of Axe spray, cafeteria waffles, and adolescent ego. At the center of it all stood Ethan Riley, 17, white, 6'1" with windswept brown hair and a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. Dressed in his maroon varsity football jacket and Nike sneakers fresh out the box, he looked like someone born for spotlight. GPA? Flawless. College apps? Locked and loaded. Smile? Polished for prom photos. But beneath that polished exterior was a different truth, one Ethan would never admit out loud. He needed to be on top, needed to be admired, envied, even feared. So if someone didn't fit into the image he understood, he dismissed them, or worse, he mocked them. "Yo," Ethan said, smirking as he nudged his best friend Tyler James, 17, white, lean and wiry with a perpetual "I don't care, but I kind of do" vibe. There goes the phantom of the halls. He gestured toward the janitor shuffling past them with a mop cart. Mr. Walker, mid-60s, black, tall but slightly hunched, with a gray beard that hadn't seen a trimmer in weeks. His faded navy uniform sagged slightly at the shoulders, boots scuffed, hands calloused. A well-worn ball cap shaded his eyes, making him look more shadow than man. He didn't make a sound as he moved, just the soft creak of his cartwheels and the swish of the mop head dragging behind him. Tyler squinted. Dude's like a walking ghost. Think he even knows what day it is? Ethan laughed, loud enough to draw glances. Bet he sleeps in the boiler room, like one of those horror movie janitors who talks to rats. Tyler barked out a laugh and added, "He's probably got cobwebs in his lunchbox." The two of them cracked up, their voices echoing down the corridor. Mr. Walker didn't flinch, didn't look, didn't stop. He just kept walking. But for the briefest moment, just a flicker, he slowed. Only someone really paying attention would have noticed the way his fingers curled tighter around the mop handle, or the way his jaw shifted ever so slightly beneath the beard. But no one was paying attention. Not to him. On the other side of the hallway, Madison Lee, 17, Korean American, honor roll student with a camera always hanging around her neck, stood by the trophy case watching the exchange. She didn't laugh. She didn't smile. She just stared. Eyes narrowed slightly at Ethan and Tyler. Just then, a group of white football players swaggered past Madison, their laughter loud, carrying a rough edge. One of them, Brad, the star linebacker and Ethan's closest ally, spotted Madison and sneered. "Hey, Lee," Brad called out, loud enough for others to hear. "Why don't you spend less time with your camera and more time on your homework? Or better yet, why don't you go back to where you belong?" Madison's jaw clenched. She ignored him, but a few nearby students exchanged uneasy looks. Ethan caught the tail end of the insult, his smirk faltering for a split second before he masked it with a shrug. "Relax, it's just Brad being Brad," Tyler muttered. Madison stepped forward, voice low but steady. "Maybe if you spent less time bullying people, you wouldn't be so bitter all the time." Brad's grin twisted. "Careful, little Lee. You don't want to make enemies you can't handle." Ethan's eyes flicked between Madison and Brad, sensing the tension spike. He didn't step in, but neither did he walk away. The corridor grew quieter, the air thick with unspoken threats. Madison glanced at Ethan, her eyes hard. "You think you're better than everyone else just because you wear that jacket?" Ethan's smirk returned, sharper now. "Better than some, yeah." "You're scared," Madison said, voice rising just enough to be heard. "Scared of what you don't understand." Tyler chuckled nervously. "She's got jokes." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You want to test that theory, camera girl?" Before Madison could respond, the final warning bell rang, scattering the crowd like a sudden storm. Down the hall, Mr. Walker pushed his cart into the shadows. And for just a second, he paused. He reached into the chest pocket of his uniform, pulled out a small, folded photo, and looked at it. A woman, smiling, radiant, sick. He stared at it for a long second, then tucked it back away. Without a word, he kept moving. The sound of lockers slamming continued as students filed past, unaware of the silent figure watching from the stairwell landing above. A shadow detached itself from the corner. A girl in a hoodie, her eyes sharp beneath the hood's rim. She pulled out a small notebook and scribbled something quickly before slipping it into her pocket. Madison, her camera hung forgotten around her neck as she observed Mr. Walker retreat, a flicker of concern tightening her brow. She knew the stories, the whispers about the janitor that no one wanted to say aloud. But she also knew the weight of loneliness, the kind Mr. Walker carried like an invisible burden. Her gaze drifted back to Ethan and Tyler. The boy who laughed loudest, who seemed so untouchable, was also the one who needed the most watching. Because sometimes, the ghosts you see aren't the ones that haunt the halls. It's the ones standing right in front of you. Lincoln High, after hours, 6:37 p.m. The sun had dropped low behind the football bleachers, painting the sky in streaks of rust and purple. Inside the school, the halls sat in eerie stillness. Lockers sealed shut. Classroom lights flicked off. Chairs stacked like skeletons in every room. Only one man remained. Mr. Walker. The same uniform. The same slow, steady pace. The same quiet presence. He moved down the corridor like he always did, pushing his mop bucket, collecting forgotten water bottles and chewed-up pencils, wiping the fingerprints off trophy cases no one touched anymore. Most students didn't know his first name. Few even knew if he had one. But tonight, something was different. As he approached room 214, Miss Carmichael's English class, he noticed the trash can was overflowing. Styrofoam lunch trays, crumpled paper, gum wrappers. He sighed quietly and bent down to pick up the mess by hand. And that's when he saw it. A large manila envelope, folded once and jammed between an empty Gatorade bottle and a stack of takeout napkins. Part of it was wrinkled, the corner slightly damp. Mr. Walker pulled it out slowly. Ethan Riley, Stanford University early admission application. He stared at the name. That same kid. The locker, the laugh, the voice full of swagger and venom. For a long moment, Mr. Walker just stood there, holding the envelope like something fragile and heavy all at once. Then he looked down the hallway. Empty. He turned the envelope over. Untaped. Not submitted. Not even signed. He could have just tossed it back. Could have walked away. Let the trash do what it was made to do. But he didn't. Instead, he walked quietly but with purpose down to his janitor's closet, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The room was small, clean, orderly. On one shelf sat a half-used bottle of lemon cleaner. Next to it, a box labeled personal, in faded black Sharpie. He opened the box, revealing a stack of clean folders, a few plastic sleeves, and a soft, worn cloth. He took out a folder, carefully wiped down the application, and slipped it inside the sleeve. Then, with a small breath, he placed it on his desk and sat down. The chair creaked under his weight, and the silence settled in again. From the drawer, he pulled out a second folder, a weathered one, its corners bent from time and grief. Inside were papers of his own, diplomas, letters of recommendation, an old UT Austin faculty badge. Dr. Samuel Walker, professor of comparative literature. He ran a hand slowly over the plastic ID card, then looked back at the envelope on his desk, the one belonging to the boy who laughed at him. Out in the hallway, the building creaked with age, the kind of creak that reminded you everything changes, even when you don't see it. Mr. Walker leaned back in his chair, eyes closed for just a second. In the quiet, the ghosts of his past didn't feel quite so far away. Lincoln High, Monday morning, 7:46 a.m. The bell hadn't rung yet, but Ethan Riley was already sweating. Not because of football practice, not because he was late, because he was sprinting. Through the front doors, past the front office, down the main hallway, heart pounding, throat dry. "Come on, come on, come on," he muttered, yanking open his locker like it owed him money. Folders tumbled out. A protein bar hit the floor. His binder exploded like a paper grenade. But the envelope? Gone. No, 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 no! His breath hitched. He pulled out every textbook, every worksheet, even the pair of socks he'd stashed in there after gym class 2 weeks ago. Still nothing. Tyler James appeared behind him mid-yawn, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Bro, what are you doing? You look like someone lit your house on fire." "I lost it." Ethan's voice cracked just a little. "My Stanford app. It's not here. It was in my binder. I know it was. I was going to turn it in today. The final print. Clean copy. Personal statement. Letters. Everything." Tyler blinked. "Wait, you didn't send it online?" "No," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. "I wanted to do it old school. Stand out. Be memorable. Put it in their hands." Tyler gave a low whistle. Bold move. Real dumb in hindsight. Ethan ignored him and muttered, "Maybe I dropped it in the parking lot? No, wait. Maybe I left it in Carmichael's." "Looking for this?" The voice was low, calm, steady as always. Ethan turned. Standing in the hallway, barely 6 feet away, was Mr. Walker. Same faded uniform, same blank expression, but in his hand, protected in a clean plastic folder, was the envelope. Ethan froze. The corridor seemed to stretch out forever. Noise from the other students faded to a dull hum. He stared at the folder like it was a lifeline. How did you?" Ethan finally asked. "Found it in the trash," Mr. Walker said simply, holding it out. "Behind room 214. Looked important." Ethan stepped forward slowly, taking the folder with careful hands. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I didn't mean to," he started, then stopped. What was he even going to say? Mr. Walker didn't look angry. He didn't look smug. Just tired. And maybe something else. Something Ethan couldn't name. "Why'd you save it?" Ethan asked quietly. "You didn't have to." There was a pause, a long one. Then Mr. Walker said, "Because I remember what it felt like when something that mattered to me got thrown away." Ethan stared at him. "Once I was a professor. the janitor continued, his voice steady but far away. Taught literature at UT Austin, gave lectures, wrote papers, published journals. Ethan's eyebrow shot up. Mr. Walker nodded. Then my wife got sick, real sick, early onset Alzheimer's. I left everything to take care of her full time. By the time she passed, I didn't feel like going back. He paused, glancing around the hallway. This place is quiet, simple. Sometimes quiet is all you need when the noise in your head won't stop. For the first time since freshman year, Ethan had no words. His tongue, usually so quick to slice, was still. I didn't know, he muttered. Mr. Walker gave the faintest shrug. Most people don't ask. Another pause. Then, with a small nod, Mr. Walker turned and walked away, the wheels of his cart squeaking against the linoleum floor. Ethan stood in place, folder clutched in his hands, watching the janitor disappear around the corner. He suddenly felt very small. The sun beat down on the football field as caps bobbed in the breeze and families cheered from the bleachers. It was graduation day, and Ethan stood at the podium, valedictorian speech in hand. He looked out at the sea of students, teachers, and parents, then spotted a familiar figure near the back. Mr. Walker stood by the fence in his usual uniform, arms folded, mop cart beside him like always. Ethan looked back at the mic. There's someone in this school who gets no applause, no recognition, but he taught me more in one moment than any class ever did. He paused. Mr. Walker, our janitor, reminded me that every single person has a story. And sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest truths. There were murmurs. Some turned to look. Mr. Walker only dipped his head slightly, eyes shaded by the brim of his cap.